Andrea, I told you I have a problem with my computer's camera. I don't know what it is. It's
Okay.
always black, so sorry for all the classes. I can turn on.
Okay, yes, no worries. I remember now. Okay, guys. All right, well, anyhow, today we'll start a different section. So last week we looked at the listening section, and now we're going to be moving on to the speaking one. Now it's going to be a bit different. Both the speaking and the writing are production sections, which means that you get to produce your own response. So you get to produce your own thing. It's a lot more flexible than the reading and listening, since as you think, if you think about it, in the reading and listening, it was all multiple choice. So you get like a wrong or a right answer. But in this case, there's no wrong or right. It's more like about how you do it, how you explain it. You can basically say anything or write anything you want. As long as you're explaining it well, it should be okay. Now, of course, you're gonna evaluate your responses based on some criteria that we're gonna see. So yes. And yeah, in the speaking section, you get 4 tasks. One of which is independent, and the other ones are integrated. Now, if you're wondering what that means, independent basically means that you don't have to do anything before you answer the question. So you get the question, you read it, and write off your answer. However, in the integrated ones, you need to summarize something. So you will be asked to summarize something that they give you. So some material that they give you, like a reading part, a listening, sometimes both. So in the independent one, it's all about you, your opinion. You don't need to summarize anything. You can say what you think. And in the integrated ones, you need to talk about somebody or something else. So you need to just summarize some other thing. All right, and today we'll start with the independent question. Okay, so any questions so far? Actually, this week is going to be all for the independent question, Tuesday and Thursday, today and next class. Next week will be for question 2 and 3, and the following one will be for question 4. So let's see. Now, before we look at the first question, let me tell you a bit of how the speaking section is scored in general. So first thing, I think that they organize this scoring in 3 different categories, 3 big ones. Now, the first one is content, which basically means how coherent, how logical your answer is. So content basically refers to whether you're answering the question or not, whether you're doing what's expected of you. So if they ask you to summarize something, how well you're summarizing it. If they ask you your opinion about maybe music, and if you answer it, you start talking about your opinion about music, then that's coherent, But if you start talking about food or sports, then that wouldn't make any sense. So how logical, how coherent it is, how well you answer the question, and how well you're doing, what they're asking you to. Now, the next category basically is topic and development, which means how organized everything is. So how you're organizing your response. Now, that's the easiest part to work on. You just need to make sure that you follow the structure of the template that I'll give you. So, for example, in the first task, that you have an introduction, reason, the example, or in the second one that you have the intro, the transition, the 2 reasons. So basically how organized it is, how you manage your time as well. So that kind of thing, whether you use transitions to help you out. So that's topic and development. And finally, everything else that you see here is language and delivery, which means how you deliver your response. So that includes fluency, how fluent you are, whether you make many pauses or not, the speed at which you talk, if you're using filler words too much, maybe Spanish filler words, even the sound that you do when you're thinking, that's something that you can actually do in English. So basically how fluent you are, whether you're repeating too much or getting stuck or, that kind of thing. Now, pronunciation, which doesn't mean that you don't have to have an accent. And that's something that I want to be clear about. It's okay to have an accent as long as it's understandable, as long as the listener can actually understand what you're saying. You have this term here, listener effort, which basically means how much effort the listener or the evaluator needs to put into understanding your response. So the less listener effort, the better for you, So that's for pronunciation. So how you stress the words, how you pronounce the vowels, the rhythm that you keep. It's okay to have an accent, just try to articulate the words to make them understandable. Now, vocabulary, word choice, basically how extensive your vocabulary is. By the way, that first thing, this your responses will be evaluated first by an e-rater, which is like a software that's basically gonna do some specific things like count the number of words that you have, the number of words that you're repeating, or the speed at which you talk. So that kind of thing, that's the e-rater. And then by a human rater, so a human evaluator that's gonna listen to your response and try to evaluate all the other criteria, So vocabulary is important, but not only is vocabulary important, but also word choice. So that means how appropriate the words you're using are, So it's not just using many words, but you need to use the appropriate ones. So, if instead of saying they're asking about work, and instead of saying the people that I work with, you say my colleagues, then that's an appropriate word choice, So that's word choice. Then how natural you sound. So try to think of it this way. Try to think like you're speaking to just a friend. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that you can use like slang words or you can curse or you don't have to be formal at all, but it needs to be natural. Many people struggle with that. They think that it needs to be something so formal and so sophisticated. And that's not necessarily true, Since you have the writing part as well, in the writing, you're supposed to be a lot more formal and more academic. So that's going to be your chance to show everything you know. But here in the speaking, just make sure that you talk in a natural way. Of course, you need to be a bit academic. So you cannot just speak like you were, maybe like you usually speak. You need to be a bit more academic than that. But in general, try to make it natural. And finally, grammar, of course. So there's not much that we can do about that. It's just, the level you have achieved, the grammar that you know. So yes, and also grammar variety, I would say. So how many different structures you know, how many different tenses you're using, maybe. Okay, guys? So that's basically how they score your speaking section. Any questions so far? Okay, as for vocabulary and word choice, the good thing about this is that we know what the most common topics are. So for instance, in task 1, they usually ask about the same topics like work life or academic life, sometimes financial decisions or relationships, family, the environment, technology, sometimes the government, certain policies, violence, maybe. Okay, so those are the topics that you get in task 1. In task 2, for example, it's all about college life, so this is just college. Task 3 is usually psychology, business. Task 4, the same. So what I'm trying to say here is that you can actually do something to improve your vocabulary specifically for the speaking. And that is check out some words related to these topics. Maybe read, some articles, read something about the environment, technology, even short ones, to have some ideas, to have some expressions in mind, to have some arguments that you can give. So, it's really gonna make a difference. By the way, I'm gonna send you this link here. And it's a list of words, okay, related to work, college, business. But there are some more topics that you need to check, okay? So if you can add something about the environment, relationships, government, then that'll be great. So I'm probably gonna be doing it. I'm gonna update this list and add some more words. But you can do that yourself too, So I'm gonna send you the link in case you wanna take a look at that. Guys, so any questions about that? All right. Now the first task, the independent question. Maybe, I think with some of you guys, we have seen this kind of. So in the speaking sessions, that's what we do, right? We practice this. So maybe we have seen something, but now we're gonna see it in more in depth. So for task 1, what you will have to do is, basically they'll ask you a question, ask you something about your opinion. So what do you think about this? Something related to work, as I was saying, to technology and that kind of thing. And you will just need to give your opinion and obviously explain, You'll be given 15 seconds to prepare your response before you answer, which is, to be honest, I think almost nothing. It's like you read the question and that's it. And then you get 45 seconds to speak and answer the question. Okay? Now, the type of questions that you get, so it could be agree or disagree, for example, like, do you agree or disagree with this statement? And then you can have something like, working alone is better than working with someone else. Or maybe, do you prefer to work alone or with someone? Or some people think working alone is more productive, others prefer to work with somebody else. What do you think? Or do you think it's a good idea to work with someone else, or do you prefer to work alone? So it doesn't matter what type of question you get, you will always have to do the same. You have to choose one of the options, working alone or working with someone else, and explain why. So I wouldn't worry that much about the types of questions. That's what you need to do. You need to choose an option. You have sometimes more options. Sometimes you have something like, what do you think is most important in a friend? Like kindness, cleanness, honesty, or maybe friendliness, whatever, okay? And then you need to choose between the options. And as I was saying, 15 seconds to prepare and 45 to speak. So any questions so far about the structure of the task? All right, guys. Now, some tips I can give you. First thing, you don't have to be honest. So what I mean with that is just, you can make up anything you want. So you can say something like, I've read in the New York Times that people who work alone tend to be twice as productive as people who work with somebody else. Okay, so I can make up anything I want. It doesn't have to be true. They're not going to check. They don't really care about that. And neither should you, So that's the first thing. You don't have to speak from the bottom of your heart. You can just say something and try to explain it. Try to be specific. So basically take it personal. All right, no matter what they're asking, never talk about people in general. Like, Well, I think that people prefer to do this because of this reason, and people like this more and feel this way and believe this. So just try to take it personal. Instead of telling me about people, tell me about yourself. So tell me, I prefer to do this because it works for me, and I've seen this, and I prefer, I feel this way. Okay, so try to make it personal. Try to be specific as well. When you're giving examples, get as specific as you can be. So if you can say, so I'm in this biology class with this Professor John, and we're looking at the embryonic development, that's even better, you know? If you look at the questions, most of them will say something like this: provide supporting details in your response, or support your points with specific examples and details, or give reasons and details, you know? So you always have that, include some examples, or illustrate your argument with reasons and supporting details. So they really want you to get to the details, all right? You really want to be specific. You want to give those details. It's important. Don't worry too much about the length of your response. It's just 45 seconds, so you shouldn't say so many things. You know, you don't have to say so many things. As long as you have a reasonable argument, a good example, that's fine. Practice as much as you can. Of course, practice makes perfect. And when you do, try to practice actively, you know? So you got to record your responses, evaluate yourself, analyze them. Don't just like answer the question one by one and then move on without, improving on what you need to work on or looking at your mistakes, grammar maybe. So you need to actually practice actively. And one more thing I gotta say, make sure that you only use what you know. You stick to what you know, you don't use any phrases or any words or any grammar, I'd say, that you don't really feel confident with. So if you don't feel like you've mastered the third conditional, try not to use it. Or if you feel like you don't know the use of this sophisticated word, don't use it, just try to use what you know, what you have, what you feel like you can do. Okay, try not to force anything, because it's better not to say anything than say it and make a mistake, So yes, I think that's it for the tips. Any questions? All right. And finally, there's some grammar that you can review. We don't have time to do that, unfortunately, but I'm gonna give you the list. So maybe you can try to do it on your own. So these are some things that I've personally seen people that struggle with, especially in this task and in the whole speaking section. So the first thing is comparative superlatives. You know how you're comparing everything, like working alone is better, more productive, easier, longer. All those comparatives, you're gonna use them. Try not to make mistakes there. I've seen many mistakes in those comparatives, like more easier or more longer, that kind of thing. So practice that. Gerunds as well. You use them a lot. Working is better. Working alone makes you more productive. You don't say work alone, right? So gerunds versus infinitive. The use of the article the or no article sometimes. So I don't know why. I think it's because in Spanish we use it a lot, but in English we don't use it as much as we would think. So for example, I don't say, the people, the people like to work alone because the students, don't complete assignments. If it's general, I just say people don't like to work alone and students don't do this and animals are this way. So if it's something general and plural, I don't use that, right? But if it's something specific, like this animal or this person or this color, then I use that. So practice the use of the indefinite article. Irregular plurals like children, child, person, people, women, woman, man, I don't know. It's really used. And also, What are these? Non-noun words. So things like homework, you can never say homeworks, right? Or furniture or information, you cannot say informations. So that's something that I've seen. Conditional sentences, the zero, the first, second, third, you know, it's up to you. It's actually something that people like to see in the speaking section. If you can use them, they add variety. And maybe some inversions, but I wouldn't worry about that too much, you know? With inversions, I mean like those cases in which you can say something like, not only does working alone makes you more productive, but it also makes you more creative. Okay, so those are inversions, but I don't find them that necessary. And vocabulary, what I was saying. Okay, guys, so now that's it. Any questions? Okay, so let's try to do an example. Can anyone please read this question?
Yes. Do you prefer to study at home or in a library? Provide specific details to support your explanation.
Okay, so, all right. So the first thing we need to do is choose a side, right? So you need to take a position, take a stand, and then you're gonna defend it. But when you do that, since you have two more options, one thing you need to remember is that always try to make it a strong one. So if you're gonna choose study at home, then just say something that's gonna support that. So studying at home is better for this and this and that reason, this example. Don't try to, like add something that's opposite to that idea. So don't tell me something like, however, there are some cases in which studying in a library might be better. Or if you're choosing in a library, then you cannot really, tell me how studying at home can also be good. Or don't hesitate. Don't be like comparing or contrasting. Like, I think studying at home has its benefits, but studying in a library is also a good idea whenever this happens. So make sure that it's a strong position that you take. You just choose one of the options. Okay? So which one would you guys choose? What do you say?
In a library.
Library, okay. Now, can you tell me why?
Because there's silence and you can focus on your studies.
Okay, nice. So that's one reason, right? Silent, everyone's quiet. They're not supposed to talk in there, so you can focus, concentrate. Okay. Now, another thing, as for the number of reasons that you need to give, again, that's up to you. If you look at the question, they don't ask you for a specific number. And it depends on how you manage your time. In my experience, I think that it's better to just focus on just one. So you can explain more, you can, have a longer example, you have time to elaborate on the idea, but it depends. I've seen people that are really good with time and they like finish with their first argument and the example in like 30 seconds and they still have some more time. So if that's your case, you can add one more and have two reasons. That's what we're gonna practice. So you're gonna practice tomorrow and we're gonna practice next class as well, so that you can figure out what works better for you, how you're more confident. And that's something that you can use. But for now, let's try to think of two reasons. So can anybody give me another reason why studying in a library is better?
It can be maybe you don't have distractions.
Okay, you don't have distractions, right? So one more thing, if you guys are gonna give two reasons, make sure that they are different from each other. So the good thing is that, you're going, so you have said the first one, it's silent, you can concentrate better, you pay more attention, you give your example. If you're gonna add one more, it needs to be different than the previous one. Think about that. So I don't know, if you say that you don't have distractions, I think it might be kind of the same as the first one, right? So that you can concentrate better, focus on your studies, on your research. I would try to say something different, maybe like it's cheaper, or maybe you have access to more information, or whatever. Because if you just kind of repeat the same idea, you're gonna sound a bit more redundant, and that's not good for your score, you know? So careful there. Okay. Now about the examples. You need to give examples. That's something that a lot of people forget about, and that is really important. Now, most of the tasks are gonna be quite personal. They're gonna be like, do you prefer to have an early dinner or to have a late dinner? Or do you prefer to live in a desert climate with little rain or in a more humid climate? Or maybe 4 seasons, summer versus winter, or talk to the professors during office hours. So most of them are really personal. So do you prefer to buy used cars? So they really, give you the chance to talk about yourselves. So I prefer this, or I think this way, or I feel that way, or I agree with this statement. However, there are some rare ones. Okay, this is like 20% of the times when you get something a bit harder, something a bit more broad, maybe like, I don't know, like minors who are under the age of 18 should not be put in jail. So you can give examples. I'm not saying that you can't. You can say something like, I don't know, for instance, I don't know, I had this friend that was stealing and he was still a minor, and this happened. So you can give an example, but it will be harder, I'm not gonna lie. So maybe in those cases, you can skip the examples and just try to get more specific, try to be more detailed. You can say something like, so if they steal, for example, a car, or if they steal at home, or if they steal to their parents, or if they steal from their school. So you can get more specific without necessarily giving like a very extensive example. But in general, whenever you can, try to give examples. It's really important you do. Now, when you're giving examples, you can give personal examples, which are like stories, routine, experiences, and in the first person. So you can say something like, yesterday I was studying at home and my mom was cooking, so she was making a lot of noise. My brother was singing and I couldn't really concentrate. So today I failed my test. If I hadn't been at home, maybe I would have gotten a better grade. Okay, so you see how I'm using that example. I'm using different tenses. It's an experience. I'm adding that variety to the response. So that's something you can do with personal stories. Or it could also be a routine. If you don't feel like using the other tenses, you just want to use a simple present, you can say, whenever I have a huge test, I always go to the library because this and this and that. So that's a personal one. You can give general examples if you would like in the second person, conditionals maybe. So you can say, when you are at home, maybe, I don't know, somebody's cooking, maybe, I don't know, you have kids at home, so they are playing around, you cannot really concentrate. So that's a general example. It's not a story, but it also counts, and it's good when you don't feel so ready to use other tenses. And finally, you can also try to give a fact in between. So you can say something like, I've seen, or studies have shown that people or students that go to the library tend to have better grades than students who don't. Okay, so you can just make something up and use it as an example. So is that okay, guys? Any questions about the examples?
Yes, so you said that it's a good idea to have examples when we explain, or we have to avoid it or only use one time once, or
I mean, you actually have to give examples in most of the cases. So it's a must. So they explicitly ask you sometimes, give examples or illustrate your argument, some examples. So you need to try to do it whenever you can. So try to get used to giving examples, to using that structure. Now, of course, there are some cases in which it's going to be harder. So maybe in order not to get stuck and start thinking for like 10 seconds, you can skip that part. But those are really rare cases. So the best thing you can do is give examples.
okay.
Okay. Any other question?
No.
Okay. So, all right. So about the template and your response. So in case you have two reasons and two examples, you can use something like this. Okay. Sorry, I was gonna say, can anyone now give me an example for this one here, for this argument? Who can think of something?
Other support, or an example of this support.
Yes, an example of these reasons.
For example, when I study in my house, I have two sisters who are playing around the house, so I can't concentrate in what I'm doing in my studies.
Okay, perfect. That's a nice one. Awesome. Okay. All right. So, and this is taking it personal, right? What happens to you or what you do or what you did once or how it turned out for you or what you've been doing. So those are ones. Okay. Now your response, if you have two reasons, two examples, you can use this template here, but it's pretty much the same as if you have just one. So you need an intro, obviously. You always need an intro. In the intro, you're gonna directly answer the question as directly as possible. Try not to make it so hard to understand. So I would definitely say that, or I definitely say that, and try to say what you think. You know, studying at home is better for me, or has worked better for me, or studying at home makes you more productive, maybe. Okay, so you need something like that in which you're directly answering the question. So I prefer this. I agree with this statement. I don't think this is a good idea, or something like that, something that actually answers the question. That's your intro. And then you need to just explain your reasons, your examples, try to use transitions. That's something else that the e-rater is going to be looking for, by the way. The e-rater is going to be looking for those transitions that you use. So if you say first, I don't know, studying at home makes you concentrate better, pay more attention, you can focus on whatever you're doing because everybody's silent or blah, blah, blah. And then you give the example. And for a good example of this is when I'm studying at home, I have two little sisters. And if you have one more, furthermore, I would say that, I don't know, studying at home is actually cheaper since you don't have to spend money commuting to the library. For instance, when I go to the library, I don't know, I spend $2 maybe on the bus or whatever. So that's if you have two. And if you have one, you do the exact same thing, but you don't need that first. You just go right off. So I would definitely say that studying at home is better, or in a library is better, I think, since you can concentrate better. Everyone's supposed to keep quiet. Nobody bothers you. You can also use like a transition in here, maybe. Besides, nobody is there to bother you. To illustrate, at home I have two sisters, they don't let me study, blah, blah. So it's the same thing. It's still argument, example. Introduction, reason, and example. You don't need a conclusion. only in case you have like extra time, like maybe 15 seconds and you have no idea what to say, or you get stuck. It's like a contingency plan. You can give an intro, I can give a conclusion, sorry. You can say something like, in short, that's why I believe that studying at home, or that's why I always study at home, or something like that. So that's your conclusion, if you have one, okay? It's not necessary, but in case you get the extra time. So is that okay, everybody?
Yeah.
Questions?
Yes.
Okay, now some things I need to say. Some expressions that you could change. For example, I think and because are very common ones. I'm sure everybody uses them. I use them all the time. But in this case, try not to use them. There are many alternatives that you can use to sound a bit more academic. Like instead of saying I think, you can use one of these phrases like, when it comes to working, or the way I see it, from my point of view, personally, my opinion, I'd say I believe, if you ask me, to my mind, as far as I'm concerned. Many alternatives to say the exact same thing. What else? Instead of saying because, you can always say since, as, due to the fact that, for, given that. Instead of saying but, you can always use a transition and say however, nevertheless. To add something, you can use moreover. So use those transitions, use these phrases. Try to look for some other words for good, bad, important. What else? Yeah, and in general, just try to sound a bit academic. Okay. So any questions now? Because I'd like to practice at least. Okay, so everybody's gonna do a different question. I think we got time. And there are not so many people here. So, okay. So this is the first one. It goes, do you prefer to read printed books, or do you believe that audiobooks are a better choice? Illustrate your argument with reasons and supporting details. So guys, you'll have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So it's actually raining now, it's pouring outside. So, okay, anybody would like to start? Would like to go first? Yes. Shall I choose? Okay. All right. Yeah. So you can start now.
Okay, I will definitely say that the audiobooks are the best option for me, since when I'm reading in a read print book, it's difficult to concentrate because I have too much loudly voices near to me. So when I use the audiobooks, I can only concentrate in the audio because I have the audio phones. So for that is that I choose that options better.
Okay, perfect. So that was really cool. I like how you explained the reason. I like how you talk in general. Grammar was really good. You didn't use those phrases. You started the right way, since. You had your reason. Maybe something a bit more specific for an example would be nice. Although you were specific, you were like, I need to match maybe the voices and what I'm reading. Maybe that could be like an example, but don't forget your transition, like, for example, I need to do more things when I read in a printed book. So for example, I need to match and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so try to use a transition. And if you're gonna do a conclusion, remember that for that, I think it's more that's why instead of for that, right? In English. So that's why. And instead of so, maybe you can say therefore or that's. That's why I would choose this option. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Andrea, well done. Now, okay, the same question, somebody else. Who wants to go? And then we do another one. Okay, maybe Diego?
Okay. I definitely prefer the audiobooks because I think they are more comfortable for me because when I listen the voice of a person reading, and I think I catch the idea. And and for example, I think on the other hand, you can listen to the audiobooks wherever you are, like when you go to your work or you return to your home or anytime.
Okay, perfect, Diego, nice. So in this case, you have two reasons, and I think it's working for you. You use the right transition. You said, on the other hand, audiobooks, you can listen to them wherever you are, whenever you want. So you added that, but I think you may have missed the example, right? Because you also were about to give one, for example. So, okay, maybe if you're saying you can read it anywhere, you can say, for example, I usually read on the bus. Okay, so something short, but try to give one example at least. All right, so maybe that, careful with those expressions because, and I think you're using them too much, try to practice changing them, all right?
Okay.
Okay, Diego, nice, thank you. Now let's work on some other question. So, what's this? So, do you guys prefer to have an early dinner around 4 or 5 p.m. or to have a late dinner around 8 or 9 p.m.? Provide some specific details to support your explanation. Again, 15 seconds to prep. Okay. So maybe this time we can go with Mauricio.
Yeah,
All right, so you can start now.
I would definitely say that I prefer a late dinner since I'm doing a lot of things till late. So to illustrate, I come from work 7 p.m. So for me, it's important to have a late dinner because I need some food to 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 get some energy to finish the day.
Okay, perfect, Mauricio. So I like the fact that you gave an example. You illustrated perfectly. You said, I do a lot of things during the day, and therefore I need to have a late dinner. And then you said, to illustrate, I come home at this time and I do this and I need energy. So well done. You used your transitions. Don't forget to maybe change those expressions like I think and because. Also, one more thing, in general, to sound a bit more academic, more formal, quantifiers, okay? You can check them out. So like instead of saying a lot of, sometimes you can say many, several, plenty of, okay? Sometimes they sound a bit more formal, or because a lot of, a bunch of, is not that formal, even though it's not wrong and it's okay, in order to, just add something to the response. So maybe, okay, but I wouldn't really change anything. Since you had those 10 seconds extra, maybe you could have given a short conclusion. That's why I always have my dinner at this time, or that's why I prefer to do this. Okay, you can do that conclusion if you have some extra time.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and finally, last but not least, Freddy, do you think we can go with you? Okay, so I got a message. Freddy says, sorry, I cannot use my microphone. Oh, okay. All right, Freddy, that's all right. No worries. Anyhow, tomorrow you'll be practicing this with Jasmani, and Thursday with me again. So we'll see. Okay, Freddy, no worries. So then, any questions, you guys? There's some things that we still need to see. But any questions so far? Okay. Then I'll be seeing you guys on Thursday. Please don't forget to fill out the daily survey before you go. And hope you have a nice night.
Thank you, Andrea.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye.
Bye, take care.